Hey everybody, and welcome to Q&A Wednesday, where I answer the questions that you have about your health and fitness goals. Now, this one's I get this all the time. People come to me and they're like, I know this is TMI, but I really need to talk to you about the fact that I'm constipated. And so actually it's a pretty common situation, especially when people are switching from eating a lot of processed food that runs quickly through your body to something that's a lot more whole food, where your body has to work harder to process it down and break it down into your system. So we're gonna talk a little bit about why you might be constipated. I know, like I said, did you like my poop emoji? I mean, that's like the thing now. So I'm like, I feel pretty good about posting that. But no, this is actually a pretty common topic. As a matter of fact, the reason why I bring this up is because, especially recently in the last probably 3-4 weeks, I've actually had multiple clients ask me about this situation. And again, it's fairly common, especially once, like I said, once we get them on a different type of eating, there's some things that do happen. So I just want to touch on this. Now, this is not to say that this is medical advice at all. I am not a doctor, although I do a crap ton of research. Obviously, if you've had a chronic issue, that is definitely something you need to talk to your doctor about, because there could be more happening. So if you think about constipation itself, is usually not the problem. It's usually a symptom of something else. And so you kind of need to figure out what's going on and how that's affecting your body. And for any of you who have changed your lifestyle to become a little more healthier, hopefully you've learned to listen to your body. As a matter of fact, one of the most amazing things is when you really start to put healthy things in it and you really pay attention to what it's trying to tell you, your body tells you a lot more than you even understand, right? It tells you when not only maybe you're not feeling well or not healthy, maybe something's going on in your environment. There's so much more to it. Like, people they don't see the big picture and how all these things are intertwined. Like, okay, I'm stressed out. Why am I having headaches? Why are my bowels slowing? So I am constipated. Like, what is going on there? All those things are intertwined. And so sometimes we have to sit back and kind of do some troubleshooting and figure out what's going on in our lives that is creating this situation. So let's talk about some of the reasons why you might be constipated. And for those of you, most of you know what that is. Most of you have had some sort of experience with it. I think my very first experience was at age 5, if you can believe that. I remember it very well. Not going to go into it too much, but I just remember that situation because it was very uncomfortable. Now, obviously, being constipated, what usually happens is your bowels are full. You're having a hard time going to the bathroom. And a lot of times, this stool within your system, within your intestines, actually gets hard and dry because it's lacking that moisture. So really, one of the very first things that you need to be thinking about if you're having a situation, and again, we're talking more like something that's not necessarily chronic. Maybe you're just having, once in a while, sorry, my phone's doing crazy stuff. Maybe you're a little backed up once in a while and you're just trying to figure it out. That's kind of what we're talking about, because a lot of this can be alleviated with diet and lifestyle, right? So the first thing you have to do is think, okay, am I getting enough water? Am I hydrated? Because when you are dehydrated, what happens is your body pulls the water to the processes that need it the most, right? And that's one of the issues with stool softeners, because again, once you take something that draws the moisture away from other necessary important processes, priorities, and draws it to the colon in order to help usher that out, that can cause some other issues. So we are going to talk just a smidge about products that you might be able to find over the counter or otherwise that can help. But again, that's something you definitely want to approach your doctor for. That is not necessarily something that I am an expert on. I'm not saying I haven't had experience. I'm just saying it's something that you really need to talk to an expert about. Okay, so hydration is number one. Are you getting enough water? Are you drinking enough throughout the day? I think a lot of people think because they're drinking liquid itself that they're getting a lot, and that is not necessarily true, because honestly, if you are drinking a lot of caffeine is actually a diuretic and will pull water from your system. Now, the nice thing about caffeine, especially if you do it a little bit regularly, maybe in the morning, you might find that it stimulates your bowels a little bit. So not a bad thing there, because it kind of wakes it up and says, hey, we need to get moving along. But that doesn't always happen, and too much caffeine can actually cause some issues and might contribute to the constipation as well as alcohol does not count towards that as well, because as most people know, if you've ever drinking a little bit, you know that also can dehydrate you and pull that from those areas. So again, some of it's just making some better choices. Alongside of that, you've probably heard, hey, take some fiber, because most of the nutrition that's out there these days, the standard American diet, really doesn't have a whole lot of vegetables or very nutrient dense food. That can become a serious issue. So you probably see all those products that they put on TV with, the Metamucil and all the fiber-filled product. But if you're eating enough fruits and vegetables and healthy, whole, unprocessed food, you're actually probably getting enough fiber. The problem is if you're eating a lot of chicken nuggets and, going down to the 7-Eleven and getting garbage from, the hot deli there, you're really not getting the nutrients that your body needs in order to bulk up and then usher out the poop, the bowel movement out of your stool. So part of that is just making sure that you're eating enough. So fiber, there's actually two types of fiber. There's soluble and insoluble. And I want to make sure I get this correct because let me tell you, some days. So soluble is what helps absorb water into the stool and creates kind of that slippery gel-like substance, which helps movement out of your system. And insoluble is what helps bulk up the stool and makes it, a good size shape, whatever, so that it can help get out and actually helps brush it out of the system. So you actually need a little bit of both in order for that to work well. And again, if you're eating a good diet of plant-based materials, greens, things like that, you're getting enough of that, and it's going to work better than if you take it in a modified pill medication form. Our bodies were designed to eat whole food. The problem is that our bodies have evolutionarily not kept up with the standard American diet of the garbage processed, GMOs that are out there. So again, you really need to make sure that you're eating so that it helps your body. Now, there is, really quickly, I want to talk, it's not just the fact that it gets really uncomfortable when you're constipated, it's also that you need to usher the waste out of your system. Your body is so amazing and resilient and fascinating how well it works. So, after it processes all the nutrients that it needs out of the food, it needs to get rid of the waste. And that waste can be everything from just, material that it can't use to helping usher out things like excess hormones or even things that can become disease. So, or even how about things like if you've heard of people having issues with toxic metals, heavy metals in their system, things like charcoal. I can't think of it off the top of my head. Anyway, there's so things that you can do that can bind with those metals and help usher them out your system with the stool. And if it just sits there in your colon, your body keeps trying to reabsorb and reabsorb and reabsorb. So if you have things that you really shouldn't be eating, even just think about the fact that we eat so much of our processed food has chemicals and additives and preservatives, and our body keeps trying to reabsorb that when it sits in our colon that long. So we need to usher that out. Now, really quickly, everybody's a little different as to what is normal for them. What they say optimal would be twice a day, but minimally you should be having 3 really good bowel movements per week. Anything less than that is, you probably should see a doctor and see what's going on there. But again, it's a little different for everybody, but first of all, your body likes a schedule. So one of the other things to remember is don't hold it. When you do need to go, I know sometimes we're busy and we don't want to have to get up and deal with it. However, remember how uncomfortable it is if you don't, right? When you get to the point where you can't, that becomes an even bigger problem. So make sure you don't hold it, and really not a bad idea to allow yourself a specific, amount of time so that you can really get things taken care of. I don't know about you, but do you really want to go to work when you're uncomfortable and you're bloated and you feel gross? Make sure that your body gets used to it. When your body comes to expect certain things, during different times of the day, such as food and exercise and using the bathroom, right? It actually reacts more efficiently and it builds on that schedule so that it does what it's supposed to do during those times. You just have to teach it. So, if you have a job or if you have a situation where you need to kind of time it a little bit, kind of like Sheldon on the Big Bang Theory, right? You just have to teach it that this is the time of day that we do this. This is the time of the day that we do that. And it actually really helps your body so it knows to expect that. Not a bad thing, no joke, right? It's kind of like, get used to going to the gym. Your body expects to go to the gym. It just feels better. I'm just saying. All right. So we talked about not enough water intake. Also, being extremely sedentary. I don't know if you noticed throughout the quarantine that, a lot of people sat around watching a lot of Netflix. And maybe just being sedentary, your body also becomes sluggish. There's just even getting up and walking after dinner, can actually help your digestive system. So, and not just your stomach, the whole digestive system. If you think of the digestive system as the moment it enters your mouth, down through the esophagus, into your stomach, and down out the intestines and out your bowel, or out your bowels, that's your digestive system. So anytime that you can get up and move a little bit, it really does benefit even just that whole digestive system. It's going to function much, much better. So again, if you, granted, I know that there's situations where people can't, but sometimes it's just because we choose not to, right? I'm not the only one that knows that, right? Just saying. Okay, so just be more active. I'm not saying that you have to get out and be a serial, go to the gym and do it. It's not a bad thing. I do it. But just get moving. Really, everything helps, okay? All right. And then there's a few more I'm going to talk about, but the other one I want to for sure include is realize that the older that we get, and depending on how well we've treated our body, age really does play a role in that. Sometimes our body just doesn't work as efficiently, and especially if we haven't treated our body well and really tried to keep ourselves as efficient and optimal as possible, sometimes those processes slow down. Not to mention, all the other crazy things, the environment. Again, if you've been in a toxic mold environment or heavy metals or any of those kind of situations where you've just really eaten really bad for a long time, those can play a huge role on how our body responds to those things. And so over time, they just don't work as well. Now, not saying we can't fix it. There's probably some things that we can do, but just keep in mind that age plays a role, right? And so do hormones. So, keep in mind, if you're a woman, if you've ever been pregnant, you know that can sometimes be a problem as well. Yeah, I've been pregnant 6 times. I get it. So again, there's some different things there. We're going to talk about a few easy things that you can do to make sure that you're hopefully helping make sure that you're as optimal as possible. But there are certain situations that you probably should go and talk to a doctor and figure that out. Now, really quickly, I just want to put a plug in for functional medical practitioners. Now, the difference between a functional medical practitioner and your primary care provider is really what they're looking for. Okay, so the difference would be your primary care provider is probably going to be more like, okay, well, let's look at the symptoms, let's fix the symptoms. You're having some issues, let's give you this medication. While a functional medical practitioner is going to say, okay, well, something's obviously wrong if you are constipated. Let's figure out what the problem is so we solve the problem, not just the symptom, right? So Band-Aid, fix the problem, right? So there's a huge difference there. And when it comes to your digestive system, there's so much more than most people understand. Your microbiome plays a huge role. That's the bacteria in your gut that helps you to break down all the materials and the nutrients from the foods that you eat. So again, a little more complicated than initially first thought. So there's more there. I would much rather go through a protocol that might involve some herbal supplements, maybe some medication to maybe fix the bad bacteria that are going crazy, and maybe that solves the problem than, hey, let's take out half your colon and your gallbladder. Like, there's just got to be easier, better, not as invasive ways. So make sure that you're doing your due diligence. You are your very best advocate. Like, there's nobody that knows you like you do. Make sure that you are getting a second and a third opinion. And I really highly recommend that you go to somebody, a doctor. They're a doctor, right? They're just choosing to go a more holistic way. They're looking at you as a whole person versus, oh, you have a digestive issue, let's send you to the gastroenterologist, or, right? Like, yes, there's a time and a place for all of that, but make sure that you are, I don't know about you, but I want to do the least invasive thing possible to fix the situation. And I want to solve the problem, not just alleviate the symptom for the moment. So keep that in mind. All right. So hormones, pregnancy, other things that can actually contribute to being constipated can be things like, obviously, medications, with the opioid crisis, we know that those kind of medications can definitely slow down, your stool system. Depression, anxiety. I know those are things that we think, what does that have to do with anything? That is more of a mental issue. Okay, but that affects how you feel. That affects your hormones. That affects your body's efficiency. Being anxious, don't you always kind of feel it in your gut? Not just, there's more to it. So if you know your gut's involved because you're feeling kind of, anxious down here, obviously that plays a huge role there, and it can affect how well your body is expelling that waste. Gut dysbiosis. So if your bad bacteria is overtaking the good bacteria in your digestive system, you can have some issues there, right? So anybody who's ever had any sort of bloating, or obviously if your bowels are full, there could be some more to it. You just got to make sure that you're going through the full gamut of kind of problem solving, what's going on there. Hypothyroidism. I know a little bit about this because I have an autoimmune disease. I am hypothyroid. That can slow everything down because that's your metabolism. So, if you're sluggish in other ways, again, that can actually slow down your bowels as well. So keep those things in mind. There might be more to it. And if you do have chronic issues, please get some professional help. Go to a doctor, find out what's going on. and don't be afraid to learn up a little bit about it. Now, don't become Dr. Google and everything that pops up, you think you have a new disease, but definitely learn how does your body respond? Why is it doing this? Do some research, really seek out those experts that really know what they're talking about. And again, I tend to go more the holistic direction because I really believe that we are missing out on some of the benefits that some of the plants and herbs and even things like meditation, believe it or not, can really bring us benefits. It's kind of this whole, we've gone Western medicine and we kind of need, you got Eastern medicine over here, which is more, mind, body, spirit. And you've got Western medicine over here that's more like, nope, just take a pill or cut it out, right? So we've got these two entirely different directions on how to treat situations and symptoms. What if we could kind of combine those two and again, look at a person as a whole, not necessarily leave out the medication or, the surgery if needed, but how can we combine that and look at the person as a whole and see what's best and what can solve the issue versus, like there's got to be somewhere in between. I've read some really great literature on that, so keep that in mind. All right, lifestyle changes, things that one of the biggest things. Start with the basics. If you are really not eating a great nutritional diet, you need to really look at that first because that's going to make a huge deal. So we talked about one of the biggest issues that I deal with when I first get clients, because we are a little higher on protein, not crazy high. We're not talking about I'm a bodybuilder, let's eat a whole bunch of protein, but most people don't get enough protein, especially as they get older. And when you do eat a more whole food based diet, because your body has to work harder to break it down, it takes longer to usher through your system, right? When you eat processed food, it's already processed. It already goes, your body goes, I already sucked up the sugar. I spiked your insulin for you. It's now shoving all of that in your gut fat, right? Processed food does something completely different. Whole food takes longer to go through there. So sometimes because protein is much more of a thermogenic nutrient, your body has to get much, much harder to break it down. It can slow down the process of how that's being eliminated. So things that you can do to help with that is, number one, again, make sure you're getting enough fiber. Take that change, that nutritional change, a little slower. Don't go from, well, I eat 15 grams of protein a day to I eat 155. Like, make it a slower changeover so that your body can get used to that. Sometimes when you make such significant changes, especially if there's a product you haven't eaten in a very long time, such as red meat, your body forgets that it needs certain enzymes to break that down, and it doesn't necessarily provide that. So if you've ever eaten a steak and had it feel like it sits in your gut, it's because the enzymes aren't readily available because it's been so long since you've eaten it. You might have to help that process along. Over time, I've learned about papaya enzymes, which kind of helps. They're really, really inexpensive. Helps you to break those foods down. Or for red meat, betaine HCl is a benefit. Again, make sure you do your research. I am not telling you to run out and buy these, but do your research on them. Maybe it's something that can help you, and you can usually find these in the supplement section of your grocery store, or go down to like Super Supplements or Vitamin Shop or whatever and find those. Most places have those. But again, do your due diligence and know what you're taking before you take it, because that supplements are not regulated by the FDA. That is left up to the companies that produce them, and you want to make sure you're taking a good product and that it has in there what it says it has in there. So keep that in mind. So increase your fiber a little bit. Now be careful not to overdo it. So sometimes people go from 0 fiber to like crazy fiber. Now it's a little different for men and women. Men should take a little bit more. I believe it's like around 38 grams a day, and women is like 28 grams a day, something in there. Again, maybe a little more, a little less, depending on your body. But don't go from 0 to 60 because you will be uncomfortable. You'll get bloated and it'll be nasty. So take your time and start increasing that over time. Also, sometimes your body reacts a little weirdly to, like I said, such exceptional changes. So it's really beneficial to kind of start making smaller nutritional changes over time. If you go from eating 0 vegetables to eating now you've decided to be vegan, that can be a problem as well. Take some time to do that in order for your body to adjust so that you don't have issues. Because sometimes we think, okay, well, if some is good, more must be better. And then all of a sudden our body goes, I don't like this, right? So all of a sudden you're trying to solve the constipation and now you've actually made it worse. So keep that in mind. But if you have an issue, Start changing some of these small changes. More water, more fiber, move a little more. Like I said, walk after your meal every day is helpful. Magnesium citrate is something that we use in our household. Very carefully, obviously you don't want to go crazy, but do a little research on it and see if taking a little magnesium might help stimulate that and help make that a little bit easier. We talked about schedule, just overall better health. You may be stressed out. Find ways to kind of calm that down. We use meditation. I know everybody's like, okay, that's just like hocus pocus. I would have told you that a few years ago, but let me tell you, through the pandemic, that has kept me level-headed, because there's been some days I wanted to lose it, right? Again, if you have chronic issues, make sure that you see a doctor. There could be something more pressing, something definitely more intense that you need to be looking at. And so we want to make sure that you get that taken care of, and that, if more testing needs to be done, that you look at that. One other thing I want to talk about is over-the-counter options. So if you're having an intense issue, you might try some things like Miralax or a stool softener or a laxative. Just be careful when you start using those kind of options. First of all, you don't want to take your body's ability away to do it on its own. So if you start using a product that now you have to use that all the time in order to expel the stool, your body forgets that it's supposed to participate, and then you start to depend on that, and we don't want to get to that position. This is for something that's more acute, like you're just having a moment, you're trying to figure it out. Some of them work instantly, some of them take a little bit longer, some of them might cause some other side effects, so keep that in mind. Make sure you do your research. I would definitely ask your doctor, but those are things that you can try over time. Again, me and my family have had some issues, so we know what our protocols kind of work best with. We definitely use the magnesium in my household, and a couple other things if it gets really bad, but we've had some time and tested and paid attention to that, so we know what works. But again, hopefully I answered your questions on that. Like I said, it's such a common topic, which I know it's like, oh my gosh, she's talking about poop. That's a bodily function and it's part of health. So why would we not talk about it? There's things that we all need to talk about, because it definitely is something that needs to be optimal for you. And maybe you've never had an issue, and maybe all of a sudden it's something that you're dealing with because maybe you've changed and you're just eating a little bit better. So if you have any questions, please ask. You can drop a comment down below, or you can message me directly through Facebook Messenger. Also, you guys, all of these videos get uploaded to YouTube when I'm done. So if you want to go back and watch everything I've done for like the last 8 years, you can go to my YouTube channel under Fillmore Fitness, and you can see everything I've done. Now, the fun thing is, if you go back like to the beginning, I'm actually going to talk a little differently than I do recent, because I've learned some stuff since I started these. But I do like to answer your questions, and every once in a while I get feedback that leads me to information that actually changes how I feel or what I know about that. I love it. I always tell people I don't know everything, but I know a lot because I read. Huge geek right here. Yeah. So if you have questions, please ask. I love to answer, and I get my very best ideas from you. So it's always a great thing when somebody asks a question. We talk about it next week. So have an incredible night, you guys. Stay safe. We have some major fires in our area already this year, which is really incredibly crazy. And I drove by it today, and it was kind of surreal. So be safe out there, especially as things are opening back up and good weather. Take care of yourselves. Please respect each other. Have some empathy. And remember, we all have to live together. Be happy and healthy. Have a good night.